guys! Welcome back to my channel after a year, 2 years. Don't even! Woo! 2 years of not recording anything. And I've got Ginele here again. Is there anything you'd like to say?
Hi everybody, thank you for having me back, and I hope you all learn or unlearn something today.
Yeah, so what are we discussing today?
Today I thought we could talk about religion. It's a controversial topic. Nobody wants to talk about religion and nobody wants to engage in it, but
Yeah, I know I'm one of those people. Religion, politics.
She's a heathen. I'm joking, she's not.
She just said I'm a heathen. Imagine that.
She's not.
Okay, so Ginele is Christian.
Mm-hmm.
She is
Catholic specifically.
Catholic specifically.
Mm-hmm.
And she's studied African literature.
Mm-hmm.
And at this guys, I'm just like you. I'm here to learn.
Me too.
Okay, I'm here to learn. So,
Yeah.
what do you have to say today?
In the comment section, please don't bash me. Just saying. So today I thought we could talk about Christianity and tradition. So that's African culture.
Okay.
And the reason why, I think it's because there is a big schism, I could say, or like a big pulling away from the church by people who feel like the church is not accommodating to African cultures or African tradition. And for years there's been this controversy. If you go to church, you're not black or black enough, or you're not African enough. And if you are in the African cultures, then you are like a pagan, you don't worship God or things like that. So I don't know if you've had that experience before, like of people making that difference.
Well, you know when people during dinners and people are like, who would you have as a dinner guest? I've for quite some time thought I've had my eye on the Pope.
Oh yeah.
Because the one thing I'd actually want to find out is, why is Jesus still depicted as a white man? Seriously.
I want to know. And
I'm curious.
I'm Catholic. Why is Jesus white on your pictures?
Yeah. You know, blonde hair. And also, number 2.
Why is God white with a beard?
Okay, no, God is like clouds though, with the sun shining through.
Yeah, but we have pictures of God as white, like statues.
Oh, he's Morgan Freeman. One of the 2. One of the 3. Oh, another question I'd ask the Pope is, what would God think about the, the sodomy, correct me if I'm wrong, or the pedophiles that are, that are priests, and nothing happens, there's no justice, they're just sent to other towns. You know, I'm curious.
That whole scandal, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting, like church has its own traditions, and different churches, like even though I'm Catholic, so I would be more paying attention more to the Catholic Church. It's been their church for about 1400 years before before Martin Luther came. And when Martin Luther came, he also questioned the church and saying, why are you doing these things? And therefore that break up from the beginning really of what you call the Lutheran Church today. So there's always been controversies in the church. But I think between 1963 and 1965, when Pope John the 23rd, when he came on and he said, let's open the windows of the church, because the Catholic Church used to believe salvation only comes from the church. So he said salvation can come from anywhere. People who believe in God. That's what God cares about, people who believe in him. And so let's let other people come in. So then it started off what we call interdenominational churches coming into an agreement, like all the different denominations coming together, Lutheran, Anglican, Muslim, Islam, Judaism, coming together and saying, how do we become a people of God and not just a Catholic people of God? And so when what we call Vatican II today, Vatican II called for a united people, irrespective of what religion you believe in. So when the Catholic Church, oh no, the Dutch Reformed Church actually, in when they came in with the Voortrekkers in 1962, they started off missionary schools, and those missionary schools were obviously taking different religions. They were actually the first interracial mixed racial schools, or the only allowed mixed racial schools at that time, and they were teaching children the doctrine of God and country. Like God, like you believe in God, and to believe in God meant that you do a certain things and whatever. Colonialism also came with that same idea. So this was before the Dutch Voortrekkers from what is Holland now known as? The Netherlands.
Netherlands,
The Netherlands. And then when the colonialism came, when the British came, they also pushed that agenda of, for them, it was God and country. So you serve the queen, obviously. And so it didn't matter what you believed, they found wherever you are. Didn't matter what you believe, what you cared about, whatever. Colonialism, they just took over what you had. They took over your cultures, your own religions, your own traditions, whatever you were doing. They took them over so that they indoctrinate you into God, a white God, by the way. And because the God was not inclusive, he only cared about white people at the time. And this is not a bash of race right now. It's just like what they believed in.
We're just having a conversation.
We're just having
a conversation.
We'll bash secretly, not on a video. No, I'm joking. We don't bash.
We don't bash.
This is information. We're having intellectual conversations right now.
Yes. So basically what you're saying is the settlers shunned African cultures and religions and brought in a new white god.
A white god. Yeah.
So what does that mean now? Because I know I don't practice what would be considered
traditional religion.
Because that was inclusive of ancestors, is inclusive of what kind of rituals?
What when we're doing ancestry, like the
slaughtering,
slaughterings, where you have like the place for ancestors, specific place for ancestors, where you communicate with ancestors.
Yeah. So I was never brought up to practice in such, and now that I'm older, I can make my own decision. I do still stay clear of that, but I've also stayed clear of the Western religion. I believe in God, and my relationship with God has no middleman. So for me, there's no church, And my daughter has asked me about this. Why don't you go to church? I don't need to go to a place. I don't need to be around a specific people. I don't need to. It's straight relationship. I can't rely on man-made beliefs, which I think religion is. That's man-made. Some religions in South Africa, I've heard women don't wear earrings, women don't wear lipstick, women don't wear. There's so many obstacles, and I'm like, for a relationship, for a relationship. So man has really changed what the basis of what religion I think should be. So I eradicate the idea of religion and just say I have a relationship with God.
But I feel like I believe in religion.
Okay.
And the reason I do is because I feel like we don't live in isolation. How do you know you're a good person? You know good deeds. You've seen other people do good deeds. You've seen goodness in humanity. You've seen, and I think sometimes we take away from God the things that are going well, because we think, I've done this, I've achieved this, but there are lots of people who are like you and are not achieving that or are not doing that.
Yes,
so
we don't give him credit.
That's how that conscious, that I always think God is that voice in your head that says you can do better or you should do better. So I look at traditional religion as I believe in traditional religion, and I went to the most. Yes, I went to the most traditional church on earth, and that's the Catholic Church. And I know, you know what? I know the controversies in the Catholic Church, and I know in as much as, this is somebody who said this. I don't know if it's Oscar Wilde or something, that that hatred can come from people, but love can also come from people. And so I believe that in every situation you meet and hang out with people that are of your kind, right? Your friends are of your kind, and if there's somebody in that friendship who's not of your kind, immediately they fall away, or somehow they fall away because you don't have the same interests. And that's what religion is. That's what traditional church is. We have the same interests, and the reason why I love the Catholic Church so much is because their interests, despite all the controversies, is looking for the poor and after the poor. And when Jesus, if we to believe in Jesus, Jesus did say in Matthew 13, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church. And we believe that's the Catholic Church. That's when the church started in its traditional form, because before there was just Jesus preaching and people going around. There was no traditional church. And the church's history goes back to that day. And that is why we consider Peter to be the first pope of the Catholic Church, because it goes back to that day. The problem came with, I mean, there are many problems, but the problem came with when you go into a country that has its religions and you're not learning, its cultures, and you're not learning about those cultures. I think that's the biggest problem the missionaries did, whether they came from England or America or wherever. They did not bother, not all of them, many of them, did not bother to learn African languages, did not bother to learn African customs. You don't bash people and say, oh, your ancestors, they're dead people. You believe in saints. We believe in saints, and saints are dead people. And if I can say, I look up to Saint so-and-so, Saint Augustine, Saint Bonaventure.
Okay, but I'm going to chime in there, right? In the, can I call it Western culture?
Western tradition.
Western tradition.
I don't know.
Modern tradition.
Yeah, okay.
Outside of African tradition.
Yeah.
You talk about saints. But in African traditions,
We talk about ancestors.
But then the ancestors are shunned and the saints are like glorified.
Yes,
if you look at churches, you know, saint, whatever, there's statues, blah, blah, blah. But our ancestors are told, we were taught that they're very demonic. You know, so my question to you as a practicing religious person, can we steer in that direction? What's your take on how African religion is considered to be dark?
Yeah. I think we have begun to stay. I think since with the John Paul II coming in, he talked about, there was now an introduction of inculturation. To saying, we're learning about African tradition. We made a mistake. We messed up in not understanding. The church has said we've messed up in not understanding what ancestry is about, what these rituals are about. Because before it was like we have ancestors' statues and we worship and we, you know what I mean, we drink blood of people or whatever. But and I think that's my biggest problem with our African history is that it's a lot of it written by colonial figures. And so when you are a colonial figure from a place of ignorance,
they villainized it.
You villainize it from a You see it with the history of Shaka Zulu, how he's been portrayed as this monstrous human being, and we don't know the full truth. Obviously, if it was a Zulu writer writing about Shaka Zulu, it would have a different feeling.
But just so white people? White people.
I said colonial people.
Colonial people. My bad, sorry. Colonial people will write. African people
we're talking
will
about
talk.
It. Yeah.
So
oral tradition.
At some point we stopped talking, storytelling. Sitting around the campfire and just relaying all these stories about, people that we now know. At some point we stopped talking about it, and then I think we were introduced to new languages. So instead of talking, now we had to read what they put in front of us.
Yeah, and that becomes the truth.
So
what's
to say,
written becomes the truth.
yes.
Yeah,
So the speaking ends up dying. Yeah.
And but like that brings us to that whole idea of now the enculturation. And what happens is that people, once they started understanding that Zulu tradition is like this, Sotho tradition is like that, they bring it into the church. Okay, as long as you have an understanding, I'm not worshiping ancestors. Ancestors are my relatives. And once in a while, if I need to sacrifice a cow or a goat, mostly it's a goat and a sheep, because we're having this wedding and we want to get from them their blessings and things like that. Yes, we're not saying they are God, even though Kasisotho we say Badimu, or in Tswana we say Badimu, but in Zulu is actually nicer because it's Abapansi, and that's what they are. You know,
Yeah.
they are the living dead. It's not that we're not going to say, no, they're evil because they died or whatever.
So what you're basically saying, if I have it right, is it's like when people have, what is it, a family tree. We also have a family tree.
That's our family tree. The
So
ancestors are our
we
family
acknowledge
tree.
more of our previous relatives than most cultures do.
Yeah.
And we give thanks and perform rituals.
Yeah.
And it's like, let's talk about marriage, for
Yeah,
instance.
yeah.
So when a couple marries, they have to go through a ritual that brings their ancestors together. And you'll find that in some marriages, when things don't work out, you go back to your elders and say, clearly something wasn't done right. The ancestors aren't happy with something that was done.
Yes.
So we have to redo a ceremony or
like we must slaughter something just to
to give thanks and make it right. So in that regard, a lot of people still believe in that. They could be.
I think even in the church with marriage, I know a lot of priests who ask you before you come, because you come for classes, marriage counseling class and everything. They ask you, did you finish off the traditional stuff? Did you
Oh, that's
lobolile?
interesting. Yeah.
Because lobola is the traditional wedding. It's like a traditional.
Okay, for
It
people
once-
that are not
Oh,
South
no,
Africans. So
that's the dowry. Yeah.
yeah, dowry.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's dowry. Is what in African cultures mainly, it's what the groom or the boy who wants to marry a man, who wants to marry a woman, he pays the negotiations. There are negotiations, and he has to pay the dowry to the girl's family to ask them for permission to marry the girl and to thank them for the privilege of having the girl. And that's also a controversial topic. It's like, you're buying a woman. I'm like, no, please pay lobola for me. Please,
And then it's like, now we've noticed in a lot of weddings, you've got the traditional and you've got the white wedding. People are clearly marrying the two cultures.
Yeah.
And my question is that a good idea?
I think it is. I think it just opens you up to like all these different options. I think what happens is, in culture, in religion, there are things that don't work for you. And I know, like, as a staunch Catholic, like I said, there are things that even I look at, I'm like, why? And as a Motswana, there are things that also happen that I'm just like, why would you do that? But even if it's like you're deeply cultural, culture has a lot of prejudices.
Okay.
Our cultures have a lot of prejudices. Our religions have a lot of prejudices, and I feel like you, as a mother or as a wife or as a young woman and a young man, and they come together, you compromise on, listen, this is what I believe. This is what I believe. Now we bring these two beliefs together. If both of you don't see the need for the white wedding, then don't do it. Like, don't do it for the relatives. Don't do it because, first of all, it's money, and it's money that you don't even need to have. But I think what is lost in our cultures is reason. Why? We've lost why. The intention is gone. We're doing it for the neighbors now. We're doing it for next door. They must see that I'm glamour.
And let me tell you something that I've noticed. A traditional wedding would be held, in the village.
In the village, yeah.
In the village. In the village.
Like that, the village people get the dust.
There's no formal invitation, no RSVP, word of mouth.
But those are the best weddings, where you just see a tent and you go in.
Traditional. Let it be a white wedding. There's an invitation.
Yes.
RSVP.
Catering. We have Catering for those things.
Catering.
Yeah. And then like a
There's-
tent, like a seating plan or whatever.
yes.
Yeah.
Destination wedding.
Yeah.
So not everyone has access to it. So
Yeah.
we then give
Intention,
more
but yeah.
power to
The white wedding, but also intention. What do we do? The ceremony is not even important. That day is the least important part of your wedding. Before, the things that took place before the wedding, for example,
Now,
if you
in
have-
African cultures.
in African cultures,
Yes.
sorry, in African cultures,
in colonial cultures, the day
yeah.
the day
it's
matters the most.
Yeah.
But with African cultures, it's
The
everything.
day, yeah, is accumulated
before.
to that day. Yeah.
Yes.
Everything.
Please continue. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. Like, for example, in Zulu culture, and I'm not an expert in Zulu culture, it's because I'm raised Tswana, but my father's not traditional, so I don't know what we do. I apologize. Please, in the comment section, tell me what to do. But in Zulu, for example, you have umkhetlo. Okay, you start with the negotiations where you write a letter to the girl's family and say, I would love to marry your daughter. Please allow me, whatever. And then you send omalume to the girl's family, the uncles,
Yes.
to the girl's family. And they stand at the gate. And the girl's family can keep them at the gate the whole day. And them guys come back. It's just showing that you don't deserve our daughter. And then the boys' family is
That's
like,
to prove
we
themselves.
deserve your daughter,
Yes,
to
yes.
prove themselves. And then they bring little gifts. In literal translation, it means opening of the mouth.
Yeah.
They
like
bring
persuade you.
to persuade
into
you and say,
opening the
please,
dates.
please,
Yes.
we beg you. And
Yes.
they just
I
bring all these
beg.
different gifts to say, our son deserves your daughter.
Yes.
And
so once the gate is open,
Once the gate is open, then negotiations start, and they say, well, okay, this is how many cows they pay them in cows. And I guess also the reason why we fight lobola or this dowry thing now, this big feminist movement against it, is because we've monetized it. Whereas before, you were giving, you were a farmer, you were giving off your harvest. Like, this is my harvest that I'm willing to give for this woman because I love her so much.
Can I just add, I stand to be corrected too. I've heard of nowadays, instead of kettles, people are giving away artwork because the artwork appreciates. Not
Please
everyone
stop.
in suburban culture has farms.
No, but you know what we do now?
Yeah.
But I think that's a misconception about what the lobola money is for. Because not everybody has cows, we count the price of the cow. So let's say we say 6 cows. 6 cows, a cow is like 2,000 rands or whatever. This is an example. Then you count the price of the cow basically. And if a
Yes.
cow is 12,000, then you have for 6 cows. Then you have to calculate. That's what they do, and then you give that the equivalent of that in money.
I'm just closing the window because we got load shedding. So carry on.
And then the other thing is that money is actually used mainly for the wedding, and that's what people also don't realize. Like, most of those expenses that are used, because the girl's family pays for everything else, the guy's family pays for some stuff, but the ceremony is always held at the girl's home. In many instances, because you also have umembes where the boy, that's different cultures, okay, do different things, but a lot of money is spent on the wedding, and most of it comes from this dowry.
And I've heard that in the white culture, it's actually the girl's parents that pays for the whole wedding.
Yeah. We do that also in Setswana. The girl's family pays for like almost everything. Like, the boy, I think he buys a ring. I don't remember. But it was like the girl's family. That's why that dowry money is so important. Like, you think, like, oh, I've paid for her. Like, no, you paid for your own wedding. Like, that's basically what you did. Whereas in Zulu, there's umembe, so where you have to, the guy's family buys for the girl, like family, like all gifts for everybody, like the uncles and aunts and whatever. So, and I think what we've lost, like I said, is just intention. What is the meaning of all of these things? And because that intention, whether it was lost pre-colonial, post-colonial, or even now, I think when we understand why we're doing certain rituals, certain things, then we empower ourselves to say, then we're more confident in doing them, first of all. And it's empowering because then you can teach your children proper things. You're not doing it for the neighbors. You're not doing it for the drip or whatever it is.
For the gram.
For the gram. you're doing it because it's important. And I like people who practice their traditions. I do.
Yeah.
I don't generally do it. I like people who practice, but who do it, like you see it, and it's so beautiful when people are doing it properly for proper reasons. It's really beautiful. And so the church now acknowledges that, and like having drums in church is something we never did before. So they have drums, they have all these kinds of things, and the church is saying, okay, this is the things that we've done. This is what can be done, what should be done. I mean, we went to there is a Benedict Daswa, who's the first African martyr. I'm lying, South African martyr. My apologies, African martyr, and it was in Venda. And you see all these cultural dances, Venda cultural dances there, and you're like, this is the church. This is what God's people are like. Like, you're not saying because you're so cultural and traditional, you go into hell, and only, like, it's not, heaven is not for baptized people only. And we're gonna be so shocked when we get things like, oh, people
Him?
like him
Like,
no.
him.
We're gonna be so shocked. Like, I feel sorry for people who are so deeply religious that they think they're the only ones going to heaven. Like, I don't. Like,
But let me tell
lower
you
your
something.
expectations.
It is so important to follow through every single process. Like Inela
Yeah.
had said, in the African culture, the process, everything before the day is so important.
Consult your elders.
It's imperative, because once there's a break in the marriage, all these steps that were followed really do help you.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say?
Yes,
Because
yes.
now when people are talking about, there was a story, a South African hip hop artist committed suicide. They had been married, him and his wife had been married in the traditional sense. When she was like, no, yes, we had separated, please, am I wrong?
As long as there was a marriage in the traditional sense, it stays like that.
But then the husband's family said no, that was a celebration. It was a party. Remember Lerato and WHP?
Oh, I see. Did
Yes.
he not play Lobola for her?
You see, everything, the whole process
Yeah.
is imperative.
Yeah.
Because once there's a breakdown of a marriage, in the African culture, we have to make sure everything else is done.
Honestly, in the African culture, if you haven't paid Lobola, you're not married.
Yes.
Like, even if you have the wedding and invite the Pope over, you're not married, because that's what the ancestors acknowledge you with.
Yes.
Because it's not Lobola, you're not just taking out the money and go home. Then when that Lobola, there's a ceremony for the completion of Lobola, that's your wedding.
Yeah.
That we finish playing Lobola, this girl is ours. We're taking her surname, we're introducing her to the ancestors, taking her to the kraal.
Let me ask you,
or whatever.
is this only your wife after you've paid the full amount, or the first amount of money you put down, she's already a wife?
Full amount. You can't
Okay.
you can't you can't have a discount on a wife.
Okay.
Like you're so owing, like lay by.
Sale.
Like not a lay by, I don't know why.
But so let's round up. Just like in conclusion, because we talked about religion.
We took the part a lot. We
talked
do
about-
that.
Guys, sorry. I don't know what they're hating.
Let's hope you still have a topic.
Yeah. So okay, let's just say,
Basically, you can be religious, you can be non-religious, but remember why you're doing it, your intention around it. Because
Yes.
I feel like God is about intention. We are quintessentially good people.
Yes.
And so intentions, they must be good. And I know they say good intentions lead to hell, or a road to hell. But I feel like we need to teach ourselves, to educate ourselves on our cultures, our religions, so that you reject something you know. You don't reject something you're ignorant about. That's
Yes.
important. Yeah.
because then you're a colonizer. If you like have it. No, please.
But
Anyway.
listen, I
Do everything with intent.
do everything with good intentions. Yes. And don't be swayed. They say somebody who stands for nothing falls for everything. Don't be swayed about like ridiculous things that people say you must do because you are black, because you are white, because you are this. Why are you doing it? Why do you believe in God? I believe in God for personal reasons, and I believe in church for personal reasons. But I'm not going to bash somebody else who believes in a different way, because God is not the God of me.
Yes, that's why we're friends.
Yeah.
She believes in God. She goes to church. Whereas I don't go the church route. I have a direct line. That's what I believe in, you know. So basically, can we say that cultures and traditions are entangled,
Yes.
you know, in this day and life?
Inculturation. There's
Yes.
inculturation.
Yes,
yeah.
inculturation.
Inculture. Look it up. It's a whole doctrine on it.
Okay, do you have any books that you'd like to suggest? Putting her on the
Actually,
spot.
when if to an interesting book, Tsitsi Dangaremga,
Tsitsi Dangarenga.
Nervous Conditions.
What's it about?
It's about this girl who is living in Zimbabwe. It's a Zimbabwean writer, Utsitsi, and you know she's an activist because there's a lot happening now in Zimbabwe regarding her. She is this girl is in a situation in a village or in a place where if you're a woman you're not taken seriously even if you've studied 100 years or whatever, and then she hates her brother because her brother's given a chance to go study and she's not, or to go to school and she's not, and then she's offered to learn at a mission school where they just take on girls who have not gone to school, and then she agrees to do it but she's bashed because she wants education. And so it's a whole read that book. It's poetry.
Poetry. This is all right.
No. There's a different flow of sound.
And the poetry. This is all right. And it's so right. And it's round.
It's Tsitsi Dangaremga, Nervous Condition.
Guys, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this conversation, and yeah, thank you,
Yes.
Kinelwe.
You're welcome.
Kinelwe. Thank you, Kinelwe, for joining us. And yeah, I hope you've learned something. Let us know if you'd like more of these conversations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Subscribe.
Bye.
Bye.
She's a mess. I'm the organizer.